terrorist group which has made clear their intent. There are people who are storming the border, attempting to kill Israeli soldiers, sending kites with incendiary devices over the border, flinging Molotov cocktails at people who are manning the border, flinging stones at people manning the border. Right. And the Israelis are acting with their usual restraint, and the media are treating this as though Israelis are in indiscriminate fashion killing civilians. It's just a lie.
Border, clashes, Israel defending itself. What's really happening in Gaza's Great Return March protests? And what are those like Ben, I'm triggered when it's Israel, Shapiro, and the mainstream media hiding from us? Just about everything the mainstream media is telling you about Gaza's demonstrations is a lie, and it's time to break it down piece by piece. So the headlines on your news programs will tell you of clashes in Gaza. So let's investigate this further. Since the beginning of the Great Return March on the 30th of March 2018, over 270 unarmed demonstrators have been killed and more than 33,000 injured, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. No Israelis have been killed and only 4 have been lightly injured. Now, just using basic reasoning and common sense, how could there have been 1 year of clashes and the statistics look like this? Well, that's because they aren't clashes. It's fully armed and trained soldiers sitting behind mounds of dirt, an electrified fence, and rolls of barbed wire shooting defenseless people. But that's the Israeli border! Wrong again. There is no border. Gaza is not a sovereign territory. Israel controls its population registry, its seas, its entries, its exits, its electromagnetic space, its airspace, and maintains an illegal blockade imposed since the democratic election of the current government in Gaza. If you want to end the debate here, ask an Israel supporter what country Gaza is or is in. These were armistice lines, previously drawn up, and Israel has never defined its borders. But Hamas runs the protests, and it's sending people to get killed by Israel to make them look bad. Another falsehood. The Great Return March was inspired by a Palestinian poet and is organized and controlled by a higher committee and 12 subcommittees, which is comprised of every ideology and group in Gaza, from conservative to left-wing. According to the United Nations Human Rights Council report, which was just adopted by the UNHRC, all groups agreed upon one thing. That's that the protests would be, quote, fully peaceful from beginning to end. In addition to this, if Hamas sent people close to the fence so that Israel could kill them, why does Israel have to kill unarmed people? What, its fully trained snipers somehow just can't help it when unarmed Palestinian children get in the way of their peacefully fired explosive bullets? But they want to kill Israeli civilians. No. The protesters have never stated this. They have never tried this, and they have never touched a hair on the head of a single civilian. But they use balloons, kites, stones, burning tires. A stone is not a weapon. Burning tires were used to block the vision of the snipers, shooting the Palestinians. Kites and balloons? Let's just ignore the 20-plus times Israel has attacked Gaza this year alone with drones, F-16s, helicopters, artillery strikes, tank shellings, and from warships. Let's just ignore the killing of 60 children. Let's just ignore the Amnesty International reports. Let's just ignore the Human Rights Watch and B'Tselem reports. Let's just ignore the UNHRC report, which provides evidence for Israel killing journalists, medics, children, infants, women, the disabled, people running away with their backs turned, and the list goes on. Here's the reality check. According to international law, even if there were clashes, and even if more Israeli soldiers than the protesters themselves were killed, the Palestinians are not in the wrong. They have every right to armed resistance against their illegal occupier. But no, instead, they are protesting and getting killed every week. And still, our media shamelessly paints them as the aggressor. It justifies their murders. The Gaza Strip has a population of 2 million people, half of which are children, living in an area more densely populated than Tokyo. They live with a few hours of electricity per day. Most of them suffer from PTSD. 80% are a refugee population from the lands they are protesting to return to. 97% of the water in Gaza is undrinkable due to Israel's illegal siege. That means that the people of Gaza have to poison their children just to keep them alive. But you know what's even worse? They can't even leave. Constant bombings, one of the highest unemployment rates in the world, 80+% using international aid to stay alive, their homes being blown to bits, the constant buzzing of drones, and all this whilst the disgraceful media stands up for the occupier. The fact is, if you are defending the racist siege imposed upon the Gaza Strip, then you aren't only no longer an impartial journalist or objective observer, you are firmly on the side of the oppressor. In fact, you are so pro-Israel that you are on the side of Israel over international law. The mainstream media has the blood on its hands of Razan al-Najjar, Yasser Mortarja, and all the other 270-plus Gazans slaughtered by the Israeli regime. And if you work for these organizations and you are watching this, that blood is staining your hands every time you repeat the lies that you perpetuate. Like the recent UN report stated, Israel must end the siege with immediate effect.